y'all, it's Laura and I'm back with a quick 6x6 tricks video using a 6x6 paper pad. This one's from Jen Hadfield and it's called Cottage Living. Pretty sure it's a couple of years old, so you might actually have this one in your stash. And I have these 4 triangles left over from last month's 6x6 tricks video, and I decided to go ahead and put them together as a square in the background of my layout to make sure they get used. I really don't love leaving scraps in my 6x6 paper pads. It just makes them kind of hard to store. The little pieces come out everywhere. So I've had this one sitting on my desk for a while in the hopes that I would go ahead and finish off these 4 triangles and not put them back in the paper pad. So I really like this general idea. I have seen this somewhere else, but I'll be quite honest, I'm not sure who. Maybe Jen Scow did this, not quite sure, but essentially just cut those 6x6 papers in half on the diagonal, and then I have taped them in pointing inward, and they make roughly an 8x8 square, which is kind of cool that you can use 6x6 papers to make an 8x8 square. I don't quite understand the geometry of that, but it was a lot of fun to do, and I really love the way that this came out. So this photo is a selfie of me, and I have just been sitting in my craft room, and it occurred to me that I had my glasses on, which I do fairly frequently. But it's very rare for me to take photos with my glasses on, so I thought, let's see if I can get a cute photo of myself. Went to print it out, and for some reason, it only printed about 4 inches or so of the photo, and then just stopped printing. And just kind of faded out at the bottom. And instead of throwing it away, it had my whole face printed. I figured, I'll just cut it down. We'll pretend like that fading at the bottom is some sort of textural addition that I've added on to it instead of my printer acting up. I think it lost connection with my phone or something, I'm not sure. But to frame this photo, I wanted to make sure it would really pop. Because it's a black and white photo and we have black and white in the background, I was afraid it would get a bit lost, and so I decided to go ahead and use the scrap of wood grain at the very beginning of this paper pad, also a scrap from a previous layout, and decided to go ahead and cut that into strips, and I'll paper piece it around the exterior of my photo. I do this pretty frequently, especially when I have limited paper. I do go ahead and just paper piece it together. This is also a great way to conserve paper if you don't have a lot of it. If there's a collection that you love and you don't want to waste any of it putting it behind photos or behind your whole layout as a frame and just wasting that whole piece of paper, you can cut it into strips and paper piece it around the outside. So there's a little tip for you. I really like how this one came out. I end up pulling the embellishments from the Avenue, which is a new Jen Hadfield collection that I am finishing up, and I still have quite a few embellishments left over from, so I decided to go ahead and use those along with this Cottage Living paper pad to make a really quick and easy layout that I hope you will find some inspiration from. So now that I've got my photo back, do you see how that brown kind of helps it pop from the background page? And then I've got these beautiful florals that actually I believe came from Hey Hello, another Jen Hadfield collection, and I had fussy cut them out from a kit club of sorts, and I decided to go ahead and use some of them on the left side of this photo, which helps to kind of soften it, because you'll notice at this point I have a very linear design happening. I've got these triangles in the background, I've got a square photo, it's very, very linear, and so to break that up, to soften it a little bit, I do come in with these florals and create a nice little boundary along the left side. And this ends up being my favorite part of this whole layout. I love the way these florals just sort of tuck in behind my photo and add a nice soft touch to the layout. They're not in your face, they are black and white, so they just kind of sit on that black and white checked paper and kind of blend in even a little bit, but it adds such a nice whimsical touch that I really, really enjoy. So once I get that pretty fleshed out as to where I want it, I'll grab a couple of the butterflies that were also tucked in with those florals, and then I will begin the hunt for tiny houses. Now, the Avenue collection has a ton of tiny houses, and this seems to be a very common theme right now in scrapbooking. So if you are a huge fan of tiny houses, this is the collection for you. 100%. And I am desperately trying to use up as many of them as I can and keep them from sitting in my stash, because this is just not a design element that I reach for very often. So to give the impression of depth with these tiny houses, I am going to kind of layer them up and use some of these gold foiled versions behind as also almost like a shadow, or maybe the back of the house behind it, that sort of thing, just to give it the impression of a neighborhood and not just one row of houses. I am going to add some butterflies on there because, again, I'll add butterfly trails behind later on, and this adds a little bit of movement, a little bit of whimsy, a little bit of fun, and I do love to break up my linear layouts with these little elements that soften the hard edges. Now, I've got these thickers from the Avenue collection, and I'm going to be using them to make my title. Now, I'm trying to decide which ones to use, but what I decided to do is use these as an introduction to the story I want to tell. So I'm using this selfie to tell the story about my adaptation to staying at home so much. Because in the past, I have been very reluctant to stay home so much. I would find any excuse to go, do something fun, even if it meant spending money just to get out of the house. And a lot of that stems from an internal fear of being alone. And it was easier for me to deal with all of my kids in school, my husband at work, me at home by myself, if I would just go out shopping, go to lunch, just get out of the house and not be alone. But one of the adaptations to all of these stay-at-home orders and the lockdowns and things like that, and just generally trying to stay home and away from the public, is that I'm getting used to being at home. I'm okay with being alone. I'm much more comfortable with myself and my own company. And as I say in the journaling, I have come to enjoy my own company. And so my title is going to be Stay a While, Make Yourself at Home, which for me I thought really fit and was a good lead into my journaling. So this is generally how I'm going to have the layout set up. I will cut ahead to when everything is glued down because I don't feel the need to make you watch that whole process. But I will add a few more bits and pieces. I decided to add this kind of a dark green sticker here to function as ground for me to put my little houses on top of. I do like to have little barriers and boundaries on my layouts. Big fan of frames and mats on my photos and even on my whole layout sometimes. And I think this just helps me to know where to start, where to stop, and to make sure things are fairly straight. I don't often use a ruler. I did on this one, but I don't often use a ruler just because I'm not too fussed if it's not perfectly straight. And I'm pretty decent at eyeballing it. Now, I had a lot of journaling I wanted to put on this layout, and I decided to go ahead and write all the way around all four edges of the paper, which creates a journaling frame. This is a great way to get a ton of journaling on the page without interrupting the flow of your design. For example, I could have put some paper strips underneath of the title, but that wouldn't have given me enough space, and I would have had to journal underneath of that block as well. And I just felt like that would really interfere with the prettiness that I had created. And this way I still get to use a lot of journaling. You can still read it without pulling it out of the album. Sometimes I'll put my journaling on the back, but in this case I wanted you to be able to read it. I wanted you to be able to see that I am investigating the growth in my own personal attitude toward staying at home and being by myself. I think I'm gaining a little bit of self-confidence as well in learning to enjoy my own company. So to finish off this layout, I am going to use some Nuvo drops for some scattering and then some ink in gold for splattering, and that's going to finish it up. If you're interested in more quick 6x6 tricks ideas, be sure to check out my playlist. I'll try to remember to link it for you in the comments below. I hope you've enjoyed this quick video and some ideas on how to use up those 6x6 paper pads. Until next time, bye!